Look man, Thanos was pretty tough, but he's not 2 scars down your cheeks and definitely never smiles tough. Kang the Conqueror is ready to take the spotlight, but just how powerful will he be? Let's take a look at Kang's greatest powers and which ones might transfer to the MCU. In order to figure out just how strong Kang will be in the MCU, we first have to take a look at the source material. But what are some of Kang's strongest abilities on the page? Kang goes by many names, and chief among them, besides Conqueror of course, is the Master of Time. Kang has all but mastered time travel. He knows the timeline in a way almost no other characters do, and has learned how to manipulate it, conquer it, and literally hit the reset button every time he fails. Kang has destroyed Washington, D.C., literally burned it to the ground, but it took him about 100 tries. That's probably Kang's biggest threat, is that no matter how many times he fails thanks to his time-traveling abilities, he will always find a way to come back and try again.
We all blew together after a while.
Besides being able to fail and come back, in the comics, Kang eventually circumvented even that power by making himself nearly immortal. When you can't die, you may as well throw all caution to the wind, toss everything at the wall and see what sticks. He was able to do this thanks to some modifications to his suit, which we will absolutely get to. Kang's suit is probably one of the greatest technological marvels in the universe, but I digress. And then, as if immortality wasn't enough, Kang developed a way to make sure his existence lasted even longer. You know, conceptually. Kang developed technology that allowed him to transfer his consciousness into a different body. So if eventually his nearly immortal body began to wither, he could transfer his mind to a new younger body. If the Avengers thought they had finally won with Kang's throat slit and bleeding out on the sidewalk, he may still have another trick up his sleeve to conquer again another day. You might be thinking to yourself, how could Kang possibly stand a chance when the MCU has some of the smartest characters ever to exist? People like Hank Pym, Bruce Banner, and Reed Richards should easily be able to use their brain power to stop a guy like the Master of Time. Heck, they could even recruit a Tony Stark from another universe, or use their young talent like Riri Williams or Shuri to help come up with a solution to this Kang problem. Unfortunately for them, Kang is likely smarter than all of them. In the comics, Nathaniel Richards has an IQ that can match some of Marvel's greatest geniuses. He's not only given the advantage of being from the future, but he's just about the smartest person to come out of 4 millennia. In the comics, Kang's advantage is that he comes from the future. This means he has access to all kinds of technology that the present-day Avengers couldn't hope to possess. This goes beyond weapons as well. Transportation, medicine, and all aspects of society have advanced beyond what the 616 Avengers could hope to know. Kang has even invented a giant sword-shaped ship. Try saying that 5 times fast, from which he launches his conquests. This gives Kang a huge advantage, as he has not only mastered his own tech, but anything the Avengers throw at him is surely old news by that point.
I already know what's going to happen.
So let's get to Kang's armor. He's got some incredible weapons as well, which we'll get to in a minute, but I just need to rave about this guy's armor for a second. Everyone says, oh, Tony's armor can make weapons, oh, Shuri's armor is the strongest material ever made. Enough of that, because if Armor Wars is really a thing that's happening, they'd better hope Kang is gone by then. Just to start, the stuff is incredibly durable. It is made out of a rare synthetic alloy that only exists in the 40th century. Not only can it not be breached, but the alloy actually responds to thoughts of the person using it. It has somewhat of a psychic link to the user. In this case, a madman bent on conquering all of time. On top of that, the suit gives Kang incredible strength on the level of some of the strongest Marvel heroes. His suit lets him live so long because he has engineered it to have its own ecosystem. Kang has regenerating food and water on an infinite level. You could be trapped in the middle of the desert forever and still live a full life thanks to this thing. On a smaller level, it gives him the endurance to fight as long as he needs. There's also his power gloves.
I love the power glove. It's so bad.
These shoot optic beams and make his grip pretty strong, but the coolest part comes when Kang cracks his knuckles. By doing this, he accesses a small amount of his time travel abilities, and his hands actually reach through time to pull out any weapon from any time period and bring it into the current fight he's having. So if you're like me and you wonder why your crossbow mysteriously vanished while you were playing around with it in your backyard, it's probably because Kang at another point in time needed it. Speaking of weapons, besides the ones he can pull from thin air, Kang has invented or gotten his hands on some of the most powerful the world has ever seen. First, there's the Neutrino Ray Warhead Missile Launcher. This is essentially a nuclear missile that Kang has condensed into a handheld weapon. What looks like a small handgun could level an entire city. Next, there's his Ultra Diode Ray. This one is a favorite of mine. I'm not sure how it works, but basically it has the ability to remove a metahuman's powers. His alter ego Rama Tut once used the Ultra Diode Ray to completely depower the Fantastic Four. Finally, there's his Light of the Century Sphere. This was a powerful artifact that Kang came across that brought his manipulation of time to the next level. With the sphere, he can not only transport himself through time, but he can actually manipulate others as well. Kang has used the Light of the Century Sphere to move the Avengers through time, and even bring some of them to fight for him in a game against the Grandmaster. One of the scariest parts about Kang is he is rarely ever alone. Gaining a following is what has allowed any conqueror throughout history to succeed. Kang is often backed by some kind of army. Whether it's one he pulled out of time or one he created, it's not usually just Kang you're going up against. As if that wasn't enough. Kang has even built an army of alternate versions of himself before, called the Council of Kangs. Though, needless to say, that one doesn't always end well. Something about a multiversal war? I don't know. All the fancy gadgets, all the strength and tech, and none of that matters if you don't have the will to see your plans through. Thanos showed us that one man, though he was extremely powerful, was able to follow his dreams if he just believed hard enough. Unfortunately, in the case of villains, those dreams are usually everyone else's nightmares. Kang has some of the greatest willpower of any villain from Marvel Comics. How else could a normal man gain the power and technology to conquer 1,000 worlds? You know what takes almost no willpower? Hitting that subscribe button. Go ahead, it's right there. So that's all from the comic page. Outside of trailer footage, we've seen very little of what the MCU version of Kang will be capable of. So let's go power by power from the comics and see what hints we may have that these could be shared powers with our very own version of Kang the Conqueror. We already know that Kang is the master of time, but has he gotten there in the MCU yet? Personally, I think so. Trailer footage has confirmed that Kang is trapped in the quantum realm, but prior to being put in that cage, he has likely already had a history of conquering. He seems to have conquered so much that he's not even sure if he has fought Scott Lang before. This insinuates that Kang has already mastered the ability of time travel, and has fought the Avengers in multiple different timelines. If you need more proof of Kang's ability, take a look at what Janet has to say. She mentions that Kang can shatter timelines and alter realities. It's safe to say this Kang's conquering career has been up and going for longer than we can imagine. Now we reach the question of Kang's mortality. Is it possible that the next multi-phase villain could truly be immortal? Well, no. I mean, how could the Avengers win if that was the case? I think there has to be some way to take this villain down, but it may take some multiverse-shattering event like Secret Wars to do it. This doesn't mean Kang's physical body can't die. For example, we've already seen a variant with more power than anyone else in the MCU take a knife to the heart and pass on to some other plane of existence. I imagine a sharp blade would do the same thing to Kang. But just because this body dies, does that mean we won't see another? In fact, I don't think we've seen the last of He Who Remains even. Sure, Sylvie killed him, but all that did was open up the multiverse to where he was likely reborn in another timeline. Kang's not scary in the comics because he dies. He's scary because even after he dies, another version of him from another timeline always comes back. He may even die at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The Ant family, probably minus Hank if we're all gonna be honest with ourselves, will celebrate that they killed this villain and prevented him from getting out of the quantum realm, only to return to Earth and realize that all they did was set another version of Kang free to conquer the world they call home. But how about his more impressive form of immortality, the consciousness transfer? This is certainly possible in the MCU as well, though we've gotten no hints at all, and I can't see that possibility being easily explained, at least right away. Maybe a post-credit scene where Ant-Man wakes up with Kang's mind would be awesome, but still, I just can't see it. I have to imagine Kang will still be incredibly smart in the MCU. However, I have reason to believe he will not be able to match wits with his comic book counterpart. The two-dimensional Kang could figure out any problem and solve it all on his own. Why now in the film does he need Ant-Man's help? There's going to have to be a pretty good reason as to why Kang can't just get what he needs to get him out of the quantum realm himself. I definitely think Kang will match menacing points with his comic counterpart, and he will even be smarter than most other people in the MCU. However, I think they need to dumb him down just a little bit in order to make way for people like Reed Richards, Shuri, or even Doctor Doom to eventually outsmart him. We already know that Kang's origin will remain the same. How? He Who Remains already told us. It's likely Kang was one of those variants that met He Who Remains and the other versions of themselves after breaking through the multiverse for the first time. You know, canonically. However, I think Kang may have even been the one to start the fighting that led to the multiversal war. His antics of traveling to other timelines and conquering them became too much, and he picked a fight with all of his other variants. He fought and probably defeated most of them, but He Who Remains came out on top. Instead of killing Kang, I believe He Who Remains is the one who trapped him in the quantum realm while he took over management of the TVA and the sacred timeline. All of this is to say that Kang, like his comic counterpart, seems to come from the future and has a similar array of advanced technology. He probably even built up Chronopolis and the quantum realm using the tech he was stranded with. Again, we get to Kang's armor. I mean, we've seen it, it's definitely there. The question is, will it have all the same capabilities it has in the comics? My money is on, unfortunately, not. At least not yet. I think the quantum realm, given that it lies outside of what we experience as the flow of time, has actually rendered all of Kang's time-manipulating abilities useless. If not, he probably would have escaped by now. Unfortunately, this means no knuckle-cracking weapons summoning gloves while he fights Ant-Man. But this could be something that he develops later once he gets out. The material, though. I think introducing a futuristic alloy that is stronger than vibranium could be a way of showing everyone just how much of an advantage Kang has. In fact, I think this could be an opportunity to introduce an extremely well-known metal. The futuristic alloy could be adamantium. Then, once he wages war with the MCU present, adamantium will be fully introduced to the characters who have used it for decades in the comics. I think it will be stronger than Cap's shield or even Stormbreaker. I just don't think Kang will be able to talk to it. I'm sure its quick reflexes will be due to some futuristic AI that puts Jarvis to shame. However, I believe it will still give him the same superhuman abilities. Some type of robotic upgrades that are barely visible to the eye will give Kang the strength of the Hulk and the endurance of Captain America. I also think the ability to sustain him could be a cool little thing to add, though I doubt it'll even get a mention. Let's talk weapons. What have we seen? What will we see? Other than a powerful stomp strong enough to crack Ant-Man's helmet, we haven't seen much. However, we have seen somewhat of a newer power in the form of optic blasts from his hands. This is a weapon more associated with his variant Iron Lad, but growing up in a world that once idolized Tony Stark, it's easy to see why a weapon like this would be standard issue at this point. But what about his big guns? The Ultra Diode Ray seems a little difficult to adapt. It worked well because it had that comic magic. And what is comic magic? Well, it's the ability to write off any explanation of how anything works by saying, hey, we're in a comic book. That doesn't work quite as well in the movies. People need answers. I could see a version of the Ultra Diode Ray that instead of taking away powers, drains them of their life force or something horrible like that. But turning the thing back into a man, that's a stretch. Something like the miniaturized nuke he carries on his belt would make for some devastation that would quite literally light up the screen. But what I want to get to is the light of the century's sphere. Something that seems so wildly outlandish that it couldn't possibly be adapted to the big screen. Well, I actually think it's the most likely. In fact, I think it just might be the object Kang needs to escape. In the trailers, we see Scott and Cassie trying to get to a large round object that almost looks like a sun. Remember that Scott and Cassie are extremely miniaturized at the moment. So that sun could actually be a handheld sphere that lets Kang freely travel through time and even escape the quantum realm. However, taking on giant Avengers requires some help, and just like his comic counterpart, it looks like Kang already has himself an incredible army. He seems to have allied with MODOK, and together they have either built or recruited this army from natives of the quantum realm. They have flying ships and incredible weapons stationed throughout Chronopolis that could help them win an all-out assault trying to get whatever it is that Kang needs to escape. And once he does, it's safe to say that most times we see him in the future, he'll have an entire army at his back. Finally, Kang's most important power, the power of will. And no, not the same terrible one from Green Lantern. It's safe to say that a man who fought in a multiversal war with his own variants, conquered enough timelines to forget that he killed a man, and has been waiting trapped in the quantum realm for who knows how long, has the will to overcome anyone. I think Kang's willpower will be even stronger than Thanos's, and that's truly what makes Kang worthy of taking over the mantle of the greatest and most powerful MCU villain we've ever seen. So yeah, as the kid once said, be afraid. Be very afraid. Kang's coming and he will likely have more power than we can imagine. Just how powerful do you think Kang the Conqueror will be in the MCU?